Welcome to Cockpit2Cowl, the show that explores general aviation safety topics from the combined perspective of flight instructors, pilots, and mechanics, exploring both pilot and aircraft topics to make aviation safer and more enjoyable. I'm Jeff Simon, pilot, AMP/IA, and president of SocialFlight.
Hey, and I'm Brian Schiff. I'm not an AMP, I'm a pilot. I'm a 36-year airline captain, 40-year active Gold SEAL CFI. Now, ask me about that later, the Gold SEAL part, and member of the board of the National Association of Flight Instructors.
Awesome. Well, Brian, we've got a fun show, but before we even get started with our whole evaluating your experts show here, I just wanted to, I wanted to say something. So AirVenture this year, AirVenture 2025 was a very big show, broke lots of records. I had a fun time. I sort of describe it as being extraordinarily hot, extraordinarily humid, brutal in so many ways, and I miss it terribly. And yet, at the same time, it had a glaring gap that I'm not giving you a guilt trip for. I just want to let you know how much I missed you there.
I missed being there. I missed seeing you and hanging out and doing everything that we were going to do. And I just apologize I couldn't make it. Nobody is more sore about that than I am.
Well, I think one thing just to know is that Jason Miller and I did the Shiftless show when we were there. We did our best to somehow honor you, even though you were not there. And we didn't remotely do as good a show as you do. But I wanted everyone to know that. I want everyone to know we will be publishing that on YouTube shortly. So people who weren't able to attend in person will get to see this complete and total debacle and heresy that was trying to impersonate the Schiff show, which I am such a huge fan of. So
it may have been a real Schiff show. I wish I could have been there, but I thank you guys for stepping up.
Well, like I said, there was a glaring gap there, and everyone missed you. Everyone asked about you. Most people asked me where Barry Schiff is. I mean, no, they actually tried to.
I answered to both.
Big thanks to everyone who did track at least me down when I was over to show and say hi, and the folks that went over to all of our partners that are here on this board, for some reason Brian has the board also, a slightly different version. I like mine better because it has more supporters on it. And also a shout out to the folks at Avemco. They came up with this tiny little teddy bear and awesome. Gave me that at the show, and gave everybody else who's in attendance 5% off their insurance just for mentioning SocialFlight. And then the last thing before we dive in is check this out, man.
I ordered mine.
Okay. If you haven't seen this, guys, Sporty's Aviation Gifts or aviationgifts.com, Sporty's has this solar taxi lights that you can put around your driveway, and then I guess you got to paint numbers on your driveway. I don't know where this is going for me, but
go in the backyard for me because someone's going to steal that thing. I know it. Did you get the blue one or the white one?
Okay, so this is a white one, and then I ordered the blue. So I've got white and blue, and they're like back ordered, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, they told me they're on back order because they're very popular. A lot of people getting them, and I think mine will be here in a couple weeks. But I got two blue ones. It's going to flank the walkway, going to my backyard patio, and I'll be hanging out there feeling like I'm on the taxiway.
Oh, man. I have to tell you, I'm toying with the idea of putting numbers on my driveway now. This is getting me there.
I've seen those driveways. That would be pretty cool. Then the problem is I would be tempted to enter at the center line instead of my side of the driveway. And then that's going to cause problems when I get to the garage. I'm so in tune to getting a center line. That's how I know I've been flying too long. I go to the movie theater and I sit down and look for a seatbelt. Have you ever done that?
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah, I did that. I sat down in the movie theater and I started looking for my seatbelt. Oh, yeah, I'm not in an airplane.
You must get good seats.
They don't have seatbelts and they don't move.
Oh, all right. Well, I mean, wasn't it the old tale from the 747 pilot that supposedly got off a really long flight? This is the whole aviation lore. Was driving home and wasn't paying attention, was totally exhausted. All of a sudden realized the car was stopped ahead of him, hit his brakes, couldn't stop in time, so he floored it and pulled back on the steering wheel. That's my understanding.
I hadn't heard that one. I'm guessing that didn't work out too well.
Well, let's get to the show tonight. Again, our topic tonight is evaluating your experts, and you and I have chatted about this a little bit in the past. And for folks to know, this is how we come up with our topics. Like we end up just talking about a subject, and it takes
Yeah.
on a life of its own. And all of a sudden, we go, "Isn't it sad that no one got to listen to that?"
Right. I
Or,
wish we'd have
or aren't they
recorded
lucky?
the first conversation we had about this was pretty animated. I wish we'd have recorded that.
So fill me in on your side because I want to hear from the flight instructor side. Talk to me about your perspective on evaluating experts and what experts you're talking about in particular.
Well, I think the big thing is I'm talking about, I guess, flight instructors are the experts we're looking for here. When you're a pilot, you're looking to fly with someone who is going to make you a good pilot. Um, People, you know, find a mechanic. To me, it's like I find a mechanic if I don't like the first one, I'll switch mechanics. But I've found that people who get a flight instructor, they find a flight instructor or they're assigned a flight instructor and they think they have to stick with them and they just stick with them whether they like them or not because they think that's how it is.
Hmm.
Why will they stick with a crappy flight instructor but switch mechanics? I
Hmm.
don't know. And maybe you have a different viewpoint on that, but it's important to find the right one because this person is going to become your mentor, not just work on your airplane behind the scenes when you're not there, but you're going to be working side by side with this person in a pretty intimate setting. And I don't mean intimate, like, most people think of that word, but you're in close quarters and you're talking about serious stuff and it's a stressful situation. So the instructor's attitude, enthusiasm toward what they do are important. So you should seek an instructor. Like there's going to be two prongs to this. One is a brand new student. How am I going to advise a brand new student? And then there's someone like you. You're an experienced pilot and you want to go for a flight review or you want to go get your commercial certificate or something, an advanced rating or a checkout, a tailwheel endorsement. How do you choose an instructor? Because now you're experienced. Are you going to go with a brand new instructor? Uh, Maybe some of them are outstanding, and there's no one person, like one description fits all. I can't just say get one with a lot of experience who's older, because that may not work either. I think the biggest thing is to interview them, talk to them. When you go to an FBO or a flight school, or you have the opportunity to talk to a flight instructor you may be flying with, ask them, why are they doing this? If they're there to build 1,500 hours on your nickel, you may not want to do it. You might though. They might be very enthusiastic time builders. So I don't want to just put all the time builders in one bucket either. But I think experience and credentials are important for a private pilot, for a brand new pilot. And I think if you look for an instructor with an established record, a success record, teaching students and have transparent credentials, like you can see them on the FAA. You can go to FAA pilot, just Google FAA pilot certification records, or what, do you know what I'm talking about? The pilot
Yeah.
records. You can look it up and you can see what certificates people have. Now, people can hide their address, and that's probably a good idea. Um, I know I've hidden mine after a couple of students I had. But one of the things that I've always advised, and I've tried to get the airlines to get on this also, to not count a flight instructor's flight time as instructor unless it's accompanied by a gold seal. Now, I don't know if this is going to work with this background on, but you can see the gold seal on my certificate. If you ask to see their flight instructor certificate and they have a gold seal as opposed to a blue seal, is it going to work? That means something.
What
The
does it mean?
gold, the gold seal means they rock. They're better. You're going to want that. No, it basically means to get a gold seal, a flight instructor has to have a certain pass rate and has to have passed so many students. So an instructor could teach for years, never passing any student, but still maintaining their flight instructor certificate. They could go all the way through their 1,500 hours as they needed to get to the big show and never have passed a student. Or they could have recommended many students, passed most of them. Now, to get the gold seal, you have to have recommended at least 10 students for a check ride, an FAA check ride, within the last 24 months. So within 2 years, you had to have recommended 10, and of those 10, 80% must pass. So you got to have
Oh,
an
I never
80%
knew
pass
that.
rate.
All
Yeah,
right. So,
so I
well,
think that's
first
a
of all, I'm
good
going to say
credential to look for.
you got to change your background. You're totally distracting me. I'm trying to pay attention to your beautiful face,
And you
but
feel like I'm sitting right next to you?
yes, it's kind of creeping me out. I keep thinking about looking to my left.
Want
So
me to go to your living room? You want
I
me to go
had
to your...
no idea about the gold seal thing. I've heard the phrase before.
Yeah, so gold seal, and if once a flight instructor recommends at least 10 for a check ride within 24 calendar months and maybe 24 months, and 80% pass rate, that's pretty good record. They can apply for the gold seal, and that's an 8710 being filled out and online at IACRA, and then they can get the gold seal certificate. And I'm proud of mine. It means I not only was active, but I took pride to the extent where my students are passing. And I think that's an important credential for someone to look at. Now, if you haven't taught for, if someone hasn't been teaching 2 years, they're not going to have a gold seal, yet they might still be an outstanding instructor. And in that case, if you want to give them a chance, that's fine, but pay attention to your spidey senses. You as an experienced pilot, you know what's right and what's wrong. And I will say, if I fly with an instructor, like I went for a checkout one time. This is in Maui, and getting checked out in a Beach Musketeer so I could fly around the islands. And I went up with a new CFI, and I'm there on a layover, as an airline pilot. But that doesn't mean I'm good at flying little airplanes. I want them to check me out. I want them to not take for granted that I'm a good GA pilot just because I fly the big metal, but I was still actively teaching in little airplanes. So we went up, we did steep turn stalls and all this stuff, but I could feel him on the flight controls. I could feel his feet moving the rudders, and I could rudder pedals, and his hand is on the yoke, and I could feel it kind of moving while I'm flying. That's a sign of insecurity. Like, he's very insecure. A secure instructor can back off, not touch the controls while you're flying.
Yeah.
Because you know how to get to them rather rapidly if needed. So I would want someone secure. I think it's important to find someone that you're comfortable with. Do I like this person? I got to hang out with them and spend some time, and I have to consider them credible enough to believe them. If I ask questions and it seems like they're always having an answer and make it up, or they say this doesn't matter, or accuse you of having a dumb question, those are warning signs. You want to find someone who will find the answer for you if they don't know it.
One of the things, I went for a flight recently with someone who was talking to me about her daughter in the process of getting her license, and it wasn't going well. She was frustrated. Yeah. She had so many hours. She still hadn't soloed with all these hours, even though she was really competent taking off and landing, and then had recently switched instructors who looked at what she'd done and was just like, what is going on? Like, I would have had you soloing in no time. Yeah. And the thing that occurred to me is, and this would never have occurred to me as a student when I first learned, is at the very beginning, asking to see the syllabus. Asking to understand what's your process, how does this work? Because we want to know that in so many other things, right? Like, if I wanted to go and get PADI certified, get a scuba thing, if I wanted to go invest and do something else that was going to allow me to do something I wanted to do, I'm going to be asking those questions. How do we get there, right?
I think it's a fantastic question. Yeah. I think that's a fantastic question.
Tell me a little bit about how you evaluate a syllabus, because it seems like how you're progressing, you can say that you're going to put on the student, but how you're, in terms of like if they're having problems getting from one step to another. But aside from that, how you get to these goals, that seems like program oriented.
It is, and a good instructor will adapt the way they teach to get you to those goals, but I will ask to see a syllabus. I recommend that people ask to see a syllabus. I hope that someone would ask me to see my syllabus, and I'll show them my syllabus. I have a list of things that I do, but I'm going to show it to you, then I'm going to set it down, then I'm going to pick up 2 books. I'm going to pick up the regulations, and I'm going to pick up the ACS. And the syllabus is going to be based on the table of contents of the ACS. Let's look at that. Those are what you're going to be tested on. That's what you've got to learn. I'm going to show you, this is the skeleton, the bare minimum. Everything in there and everything in part 61, 50, whatever it is for whatever certificate you're working on, better be in the syllabus that I show you. Mm-hmm. And so I'll show them, this is the bare bones. This is what you have to have. This is what the regulations say you must be taught. And here's what you're going to be tested on. I want them familiar from the start of these 2 documents. Then, okay, here they are. Here's my syllabus. Notice that I have them all. We highlighted them all. But now, look at all that extra meat on there. That's the stuff I'm going to show you from my experience that I think you need to know. We're going to spend a little extra time on these things. Things that aren't just the bare minimum. The ACS and the Airman Certification Standards is what that is for those who don't know. And the regulations, those are the bare minimum. Those are the worst you can be. And if that's your aim, that's your target, go for it. And I like to teach a lot more than that. I like to see a syllabus with more things than that in it.
You know, one of the things that that I carry through both from what I like to see on the actual flying side, so with experts that have to do with your flying proficiency, as well
Yeah.
as on the maintenance side, is something that kind of emphasizes a person and a process that emphasizes getting as quickly as possible to some of those experiential goals. And what I mean by that is there's a huge investment to learning how to fly. There's a huge investment to, you know, getting your IFR, getting your commercial, any one of these types of things. And the same is true of owning an aircraft. And I have admiration. I'm not sure what your reaction is going to be to this, but I really have admiration to people that go straight to the end goal and show these students early on, this is what you're getting to. This is what you're going to be able to do. Let me show you some things. Let me
That's
get,
exactly what I'm
including like
referring
getting
to.
someone flying, you know,
Yeah.
soloing quickly or whatever. But it's that idea, like, even if it's your IFR, why not make your first flight? Let's actually just have you ride along while I actually fly it. But I show you what your end goal is. We're going to go right now. We're going to do an IFR, an IMC takeoff. We're going to go a quick trip. We're going to shoot an approach. And the goal of this is for you to see where you're going to be. I just love
Yeah.
that concept.
And we're going to get to point A and get to point B, then come back to point A. And I think it's ideal if you can make a scenario out of it, go see a museum at point B before you come back to point A, have lunch at point B, find a good restaurant, find an interesting place to go to make this like, yes, this is the end game. The end game is we're going to go from A to B and have some fun.
Yeah.
And yes, I demonstrate. I also let the student do the first takeoff. If it depends on who they are and how they
Mhm.
taxi, but I'll start showing them how to taxi. I'll talk them through a takeoff, and I will let them do a takeoff. But I think it's important for a student to see. So an instructor should demonstrate and then talk through it and
Yeah.
then talk you through it. So I agree with you. I think it's good to see the end game. When I show the ACS, that's the end game where we're trying to get to
Right.
for the test. But yeah, what are we trying to do with our certificate or license? We want to go somewhere. So yeah, show them how to go somewhere. I think that's a fantastic idea. I think it's important that you're compatible with the person you're going to be spending this much time and money on and with, that you can communicate together. If there's any kind of snag in the way they're communicating with you or their teaching style or personality, it should mesh well with the way your learning preferences are. So an instructor who communicates clearly and encourages their students along and adapts to your pace instead of being disappointed by it, like I'm sure your instructor was, will I was sorry, that was a
Funny.
jab.
Thanks.
will
Yeah, I don't think I didn't catch
will
that.
will improve your understanding, your confidence, because they're going to be teaching to your level, to your speed, and will adapt the way that they're training based
Yeah.
on how you learn and again, your pace. But I think
Yeah.
that compatibility between you and the instructor, you'll know. I don't think you really need advice other than listen to your senses. If you just don't feel comfortable around this person, then something's wrong.
Yeah.
And
So let's talk about secondary instruction a little bit, because obviously a lot of people who are watching tonight, the vast majority probably have
right,
their license. Some don't,
sure.
but many do. And I think that when we think about evaluating your experts, and now on the flight training side of things, there's what I like to see is this idea that we don't just trust people. So if we're not talking about necessarily progressing through a ticket or something like that, what I'd like to see more people, you know, it's one of my kind of pet peeves, is people who own an aircraft or fly the same type of aircraft all the time should have an opportunity to be taught by someone that really is an expert in that. That instead
Hmm.
you sit there and have an opportunity to say to them in evaluating who they are as an expert, show me what this plane can actually do. Teach me. Not
Hmm.
in an unsafe way, but in a safe way. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Some of the coolest experiences I've ever had have been when a real expert says, I want to teach you what this plane can safely do so you can become a better pilot. And they've gone like over the runway and said, do you think we can land from here? And I've been like, nope. and then they put it right into an amazing slip, the right thing, they do
Yeah,
whatever, they put it down. And the purpose of that isn't to show off, it's for someone that's a real expert to turn to you and
yeah,
say, you've been flying for how many hours? You've been flying this plane how long? For how many years? You should be able to do this. This is what
right.
you need to be able to do.
I
And
agree. I think that's fantastic advice. When I first checked out in the Boeing 727, I had a similar experience because I had the salt of the earth instructor who was showing me, basically things that like, okay, can you make the runway? Just it's what reminded me because he did exactly what you're saying. Look at the runway. We're clear for visual approaching Kansas City, and we're like, 20 miles out and 8,000 feet. Can you make it? If you, and he told me little rules of thumb about doing this. If you can see over the nose, you can land there. If your nose clears when you're turning, your wingtip's going to clear. Little rules of thumb by experienced pilots in a certain airplane, like when you go for your tailwheel checkout. If I'm honored with your presence to teach you in the tailwheel and give you the tailwheel endorsement in my Citabria, I have a lot of time in that airplane, and I'm going to show you all ends of the spectrum on that airplane. That's going to get you tailwheel current, but that airplane behind you, I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to prepare you for that. I hope that you can find someone with a lot of experience in the T-51 that can
yeah,
show you that in that airplane, because that's not me. But I am your tailwheel guy to get
yeah.
you for that next step.
That makes, I mean, obviously I'm going to be doing that with you, no question. People are going to watch some of that. Um,
That's pretty fun.
just for, if for nothing else, just for comic relief. But
Yeah.
yeah, that I totally agree with you, and I think it goes through every level. Like I remember I started commercial training a while back, and what was missing from that, I think what kind of turned me off at the time to it, was the person didn't actually say, hey, let me go up and demonstrate all these maneuvers. Like, this is the standard. I want to show you, not in a show off kind of way, but in a, this is how you do it in your plane. Let's go. Let me show you what this is like. That's an expert, right?
That is, and that's $1 million to see something like that happen. You see, because you can absorb it while you're watching. If you do it for the first time, not them, and you screw it up, well, the law of primacy kicks in. Now you're going to do it that way every time.
Which is exactly what happened. Which is exactly
Oh
what happened.
yeah,
They said, go, show me this, go up here, do this, do that. And what do you think? Like, I'm going to hit it the first time? No, I'm going to botch it terribly.
yeah.
And then I don't know what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. So I try to do some similar things like that. Like on the first takeoff, I might do a takeoff pattern and come back around and land, but I talk about that takeoff because I want you to do it on your first lesson. And I want to show you, I'm not just moving and, trying to aim for like, some instructors will say, pull back. Well, you do that, the student's going to pull to the moon. And you don't want to see that. I just wrote about this in my latest column it's called CFI Care for NAFI. And I wrote about knowing where to put the airplane to get what you want out of it. So instead of an instructor who just says, okay, pull back to go up, you want an instructor who says you want to put the nose on the horizon. That means you're going to start articulating, doing what you have to do, and figuring out where the flight control needs to be to get the airplane where you want it. Not just, hey, I'm going to pull back.
Yeah.
So,
There's another part of evaluating the experts I think is really, really important as a subject, and that is, uh, I, we live obviously in the internet age, not only beyond that, but we live in the AI age, we live in all this other stuff, and there's a lot of opinions out there, and
no.
there's a lot of information out there,
Yeah.
and it kills me when I see people believe that someone is an expert because they have a strong opinion on something,
Or a big
and
following.
you just follow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like they have a following, they have a whatever. That doesn't mean it's right. I've seen, and I mean, we'll get to the maintenance side, but even on the just basic airmanship side, I've seen absolutely terrible advice that goes out to people that just follow it on forums and other things and think this person's great. And I'm just sitting there like, this
I
person's
have
nuts.
too. I serve as mentor to almost everybody who I've taught to fly, people who are still learning to fly, and some people who aren't even my students, but I'm like, you got questions, reach out. I don't want something to go unanswered. If you have a concern, I want to help you with it. And people call me and say, I just saw this. What is that? And I'm like, no, not at all. Absolutely not. Just because it's published on the internet, it's not vetted, like a professional flight school course. And so have a mentor, someone you trust with experience that you can ask when you see something online like that. Be skeptical of everything. Even with the AI, AI is not always right. I like if they can point you to a source, then read the source, read the FAA document that it comes from, read the manual of the airplane. There are a lot of things that are made up. There's a lot of lore. There's a lot of wives' tales and things that are just not actually right. I've seen some of these videos where there's a guy flying a Citation around the country and he's videoing everything, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he just showed that. People are going to start doing it. Like I hear people on the radio now saying, when they're told to ident, they say, here's the flash, because they probably saw that on one of these YouTube videos, and I'm like, what do you mean here's the flash? That's not a thing. It is a thing. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think a message here, which I'll definitely be carrying forward into the maintenance side of this discussion, is we have to have healthy skepticism. We can't put people on a pedestal. I put you on a pedestal, right? But you've earned it. I mean, but in reality, you just have to question things. You shouldn't be say anyone who feels their instructor is just the best in the whole world. It's like, okay, have you tried someone else just for your next BFR? Why? So you just have a different perspective and you're just checking your work. You're just checking your
Absolutely,
source.
yeah. Most people get comfortable with a CFI who will just go have lunch and then we'll go for a flight and they'll sign them off for their flight review. You should want to be challenged. So a lot of times the advanced student is also to blame. Learner, I guess student is offensive. Learner is to blame because they just want to go for the easy thing, get it done and knock it out and check the box. That should not be your goal. Your goal should be to learn something new, find out where you're weak and challenge that. I did a thing last month on the Schiff show. We talked about stall recovery, stalls and spins, and teaching that. And I basically told the flat out statement: if you're afraid of doing a stall, you are going to hurt yourself or someone else or both. You need to get that fixed. You need to go up with an instructor who's experienced and fix that. You should not be afraid of that, and you need to get it fixed. So there are certain instructors who are afraid of that. If you have instructors who appear intimidated or instructors who don't show up dressed well, professional, respectful in listening to you, answering your questions to the degree that you feel like they've listened to you, or if they're dismissive. These are flags to watch out for. And there are plenty of instructors. You don't have to stick with the one. So find someone, interview people who've flown with those instructors. I would encourage someone to ask an instructor for someone who's flown with them and say, hey, let me talk to a couple of your students. I want to see how they get along, what they say. And don't be afraid to do that.
Well, the other thing, as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of kind of diversifying your sources. And I think that there's a lot of good ways to do that also with type clubs. So I'm obviously on the Beechcraft side of things. Other people are in whatever aircraft you fly. But many organizations are similar to what the Bonanza Society does. They have this BPPP program, the Bonanza Pilot Proficiency Program.
Sure.
And it doesn't matter. You can have your own flight instructor that you've used for years, but take this opportunity to see, hey, is there someone nearby, or is there an event I can go to, a destination where I can go through this program that my type club offers, which I can almost guarantee you, unless your instructor happens to be one of them, can also almost guarantee you it's going to be a different, richer experience, more unique to maybe your aircraft, but something's going to come out of that you're going to say, oh, I not only did I learn something, but I actually saw a few things about my instructor that maybe I need to start questioning a little bit more, or I need to, fill out my whole experience of who trains me. And I think that's incredibly important, and you don't know it unless you go somewhere else. It's like going to the same restaurant every single time. If you don't go somewhere else, you're never going to know whether you're somewhere good or not.
As a co-pilot for an airline, when I was a co-pilot, I had the benefit of flying with so many different captains. Even though we had structured procedures and standard operating procedures, everybody had a little bit different way of doing things and could teach something different. And so I like to take the things I like from each of those captains. When I fly with, if I give flight reviews now, and I gave one not too long ago to someone in their Bonanza, and he showed me some things that I hadn't seen before. I'm like, that's pretty cool. because he said another instructor showed me this. If you have an instructor who's not willing to learn new things, also, I mean, I've learned a lot by diversifying with different students, with different pilots I fly with to, give flight reviews or instrument proficiency checks or whatever. As an instructor, I've learned a lot. That's why the experience, I think, is huge in that respect, because if it's a humble enough person to be open to learning new things, then you've got a fantastic instructor. On that note, humility, I think, is a very big key also. If they seem arrogant and cocky, sometimes that's okay. Just make sure they can back it up. But like you said, verify. Don't trust everything that you hear. Don't put it all on a pedestal.
Yeah, well, and it makes your life a lot more interesting if you mix it up with different people. It just does.
Did you ever have an instructor that said, okay, go out and do the pre-flight, I'll be out there shortly, and you're sitting in the airplane waiting and they show up after you've done the pre-flight?
Of course, but not my primary. Again, I think I was really spoiled. My primary instructor was this incredible guy who just, salt, like you said, salt to the earth, knew what he was doing, knew how to push things, but was always pushing. There was always he had a mission, he had an agenda, he was driven. I finished I got my private in 42 hours, and he was like, show up tomorrow night, we're doing night flying. Show up for this, we're doing whatever. And he pushed me along. And I remember even doing my solo, it wasn't like I even knew it was coming. It was okay, we do whatever. And he's like, park over there by the tower. Got out and just said, all right, do three more just like that. Come back, pick me up. Total shock to me, total news. I had no idea that was coming. And I went, obviously scariest thing I ever did, but at the same time, just nailed it, came back, was on another level. And I respect him so much to this day.
That's cool. As an instructor, I remember those moments and seeing the students' eyes when you're going to get out of the airplane. You know it's going to happen. There's absolutely no doubt. An instructor should have no doubt when they get out of the airplane. And I never had a doubt. I knew this was going to be just fine. But then they would have doubt. They're like, oh, really? And that's funny. So on my first note, back to the pre-flight thing, I try to teach something on every pre-flight. I want to teach you more about this airplane. I want to show you some things. You're going to get something on every lesson with me because I'm going to be out there with you. And I'm going to ask questions. If you can't answer them, I'm going to explain it. And we're going to go through a lot, and you're going to get something out of that time you're paying for. You're paying for the instructor while you're walking around the airplane and they're inside having a cup of coffee, schmoozing, with the front desk girl or guy. That's not what you want. You're wasting money on somebody who's doing that. Now, the occasional, I got to go to the bathroom, go get it started, I'll be right out there. Yeah, okay, I get that. But as a primary instructor, even an instrument instructor, there's more you can keep teaching during that ground time to continue. And on that note, there should be a briefing. If you're not doing a pre-flight briefing with the instructor, you're missing out on what's going to help you through the lesson. And same goes for post-flight. If they're not doing a post-flight briefing to review what you did, now it can be 2 minutes at the end of the flight, just reviewing, okay, we want to do this differently next time or whatever. I debrief as I go, so my post-flights are pretty short, but there should be something like that.
Yeah.
The other story was on solo, when my son soloed. Hopefully he's not watching this or he'll be embarrassed, but it took me 150. I didn't solo till I had 150 hours, and I had 200 when I got my private. I had to wait till my birthday. Different story, but nevertheless, it makes some of my students feel better. I'm like, hey, I had 100 hours when I soloed.
That's
when
really
my son soloed. The instructor, I enlisted someone else to get him up through solo, and then I took him from that point on because I wanted what was best for my kid, and I found a fantastic instructor in tail wheels, and that wasn't my forte. I'm good at it, but for my son, I wanted to give him a good foundation because it is private and it's tail wheel. So he gets out of the airplane and says, all right, go do it by yourself. And my son just sat there. He never went anywhere. He thought he was being tested because he didn't have an endorsement. He had his logbook right here, and he knows he's supposed to have an endorsement. He thought this was a test, and it's like, I can't solo without an endorsement.
That's funny.
Like that. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned at the very beginning comparing this to the maintenance side, and you thought it would be very different, and I beg to differ. I see the most common issues on the maintenance side are people putting their mechanic on a pedestal, not wanting to be involved, things like that. Now, it's a given that if someone has a problem with their mechanic and butts heads or has a big maintenance issue with their aircraft, or the mechanic, does something wrong, that objectively, in that case, they're going to have some type of a falling out and see the mechanic in a different light, where if it were flight training, you could sort of push the person could point fingers at you. It's not something else. So I do get that, but that actually isn't what I see the most of. What I see the most of are people who don't think that they need to be challenging who they're taking their mechanic to and diversifying that. Because
what do you mean?
Well, so what I mean is it's easy for people to sit back and go, look, most of the fleet's over 50 years old, right? Except for Cirruses, things like that. And because of that, there's this idea that if someone has been a mechanic for many years and lots of people like them, that they just are good because the planes don't change. And that's not true. It's just not. The fact is that you don't know what you don't know. And as an aircraft owner or operator, you're responsible for the airworthiness of the aircraft, period. We say that 100 times and people still don't.
I know, and that's what's crazy. I don't feel qualified. I don't feel qualified to be in charge of that. So I entrust a mechanic. I entrust that when they put their signature on it, that it's right. And it's not always the case.
And I get that. But the reality is then too bad, because the law says and the regulations say that you're responsible for the airworthiness of the aircraft. Doesn't mean look, you can point fingers all you want, but at the end of the day, it's your butt in the air, not theirs.
Agreed.
Right?
So at the end of the day, I would like their butt in the air with me. I think a mechanic that'll go flying with you right after the annual, that's the guy that I want.
True. Okay, that makes sense. But I'm an advocate of you need to own this knowledge as much as you can. You don't have to know how to swing wrench. You don't have to know how all these different things are that go on. But the reality is, if you own an aircraft, especially if you're the owner, those airworthiness directives, they get mailed to you. The mechanic has to search for them. They're not the owner of the N number and the serial number. So they have to be up on reading them. But the person the FAA notifies is the owner. That's who gets the actual notification of things like that. And when there are things happening, I just think you need to know enough to ask and have a certain amount of skepticism in your approach to it. An example, people think that technology isn't evolving, but our avionics are evolving. What's happening with components is evolving. But even understanding the things we have and are using every day is evolving. I will say that my recommendations for oil changed dramatically over the last few years. And it changed based on visits to Houston, to Aeroshell and Phillips and diving.
Yeah, that's because the engines haven't changed. The oil hasn't changed, or maybe it has. But I mean, that all stuff has been the same and a constant, but we learn more. And is that what you're saying? That things?
Yeah, it really is. So here's an example where I had this great opportunity for a deep dive, and saw real testing data that was new, that was newly tested, looking at these kind of, as we call them, like old wives' tales or whatever, common knowledge of things, saying that like straight weight oils are better in all of these ways, right? About staying on parts longer because they're thicker, like thick honey, or blah, blah, blah. And, does better corrosion, does everything else. Well, after I had learned all this and spoken with the engineers, the technicians, the people who ran the tests, seen the test data, all of a sudden it's like, hold on, it's completely wrong. Absolutely completely wrong. A multi-weight oil, especially a mineral-based like Phillips XC20W50, is far superior. It cools the engine better. It's better for corrosion protection. It just does a better job of gathering contaminants. Once I understood the science of it, and then you ask them, like, why do you sell straight weight now that you've shown me all this data? And they sell it themselves. And they say, we sell straight weight for the people that just either haven't heard or don't believe it, even though we have the data. We sell it because they're going to buy it. But it doesn't mean we don't know what's best. And at the end of the day, I then try to spread the word based on what I've seen. I've written articles. But it means that, like, how many shops don't listen to that? It's their business, but they don't.
So what do you as the pilot owners consumer do? How do you vet that as a mechanic? I've been to 3 mechanics so far. I landed on one I like, and I've been to several, and I've had little issues here and there. I mean, I will switch. You have an issue, you switch mechanic, but a lot of times
Right.
students won't switch when they have issues with instructors.
Yeah, I'm much more concerned with the people who don't switch, because the people who do
Yeah.
switch have discovered something, right? They've already encountered something that is
Yeah.
causing them to move on. It's the people I have met who are absolutely diehard, my mechanic is on a pedestal. And as I've talked to them and had more deep conversations about their maintenance and their aircraft, all these red flags are going off, right? I ask them about things. It could be someone who loves their mechanic and they have a Lycoming. And I'm like, great. How many hours are on your engine? Oh, have you done the service bulletin to check your valves and your valve guides for
Yeah.
stickiness? And they're like, nope. Can you ask your mechanic about that? And they come back, no, he doesn't do it. He says it doesn't matter. Like, and this is your hero. I mean,
Right.
you don't need to be the expert. You just need to like keep reading and keep learning and bring those questions back. And if you don't get a good answer, you need to switch. You need to
So a lot of
experiment.
mechanics aren't like you. A lot of them are scary and intimidating and very gruff.
I'm scary in the
No, not like you. No, many are not like you. Mechanics are scary, gruff, and they're tougher. They're dirty hands, and
Yeah, you're
I
right.
feel like
And they're threatening, because if
and
you
they're a
come to
little
them and you
threatening.
ask
So
a question, they're like, well, you know what? Find someone else. And I got so many customers anyway.
right.
Well, really? Is that really who you should be using?
Yeah,
I
I know.
think there's low risk ways of managing it, in a number of ways. So here's some examples. One thing is, if you look for programs that, again, many type clubs offer. So for example, again, Bonanza, along with Continental, they offer service clinics. You can just fly somewhere, take your aircraft for like a scheduled thing, get into one of these, and then have someone in a short period at least go over highlights that are unique to your aircraft and give you a report based on it. If you don't have that, then consider essentially doing a pre-buy at a different facility. Like, you're not going to sell your airplane, that's fine, but consider like finding a shop that people recommend that isn't where you normally go and saying, hey, I'd like to come out for 1 or 2 days, and can you book me in to basically do a pre-buy on my plane as if I was hiring you to do it.
Yeah,
A
and show
different
me.
set of eyes.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's
It isn't going to
fantastic.
cost you much, and you're going to
Right.
come back with all these questions to your own mechanic if you love your guy or your woman that works on your plane.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't matter. Like, it just puts you ahead of the curve. And I think mechanics are, I am defending mechanics. They're overworked, underpaid, all the things that go along with that. And yet, in their world, they become focused on the things they've been exposed to. They've seen certain things break, so they look at those things closer. They know
Yeah,
about
that
them.
makes sense.
But that doesn't mean that it's state of the art of what's happening, or that they know the latest things or things they just haven't come in contact with. And so I really think it's important and incumbent upon the aircraft owner to do that in every way possible. And one last example is, if you are at Oshkosh, we are at Sun and Fun, I think it's a great idea to go around to the vendors of components, of things that work on aircraft, everything that applies to your plane. Go
I do
talk to
that.
Continental if you have a
I
Continental
love doing
engine,
that.
right? Go talk to Continental if you have a Continental engine. Go
Yep.
talk to Hartzell if you have, about propellers. Go talk to whoever makes your starter, whoever is the oil that you're using, and just ask them open-ended things. Hey, what do you guys see the most? What should I be thinking about? They love that. They
They
absolutely
do,
love
and
it.
I've found that to be a very awesome technique. I think that's great advice. I've done that at Oshkosh myself, to go visit all the manufacturers that go into my airplane as well, and I've learned a lot. So I think that's great advice. Is there any way to vet a mechanic? Like, there's no Yelp for mechanics, or any kind of, like, a shop might have a rating somewhere, or evaluations that people post or whatever. But like a pilot, you can vet them a little bit. A CFI, you can look at their record. You to the extent that you can see if they have a CFI, a gold seal or not. You can check
It's
their
really
certificate.
hard. I mean, you can visit, you can find out who actually swings wrenches on the plane, but
So that's the thing, is who's working on my airplane? Is it the mechanic, or is it,
not always.
another monkey that they've hired to work to do the
It
hard
could be a
work.
monkey, although I'm a glass half full person. So usually in the shops I see that do have the monkeys there, those monkeys want to be mechanics and are usually pretty good people.
Usually, yeah.
But I want to emphasize something because a lot of people listening understand the realities of the maintenance world. And the reality of the maintenance world is you don't have a lot of options for where you take your plane. They're overbooked. You can't get in. I mean, I get that
So
this
you have
is
to
the world.
settle sometimes.
Well, no. How about you got to step up your role in the process? So if you're going to stay with your person, if you don't feel like you can shop around, you still can do the thing we talked about earlier. You can still fly it somewhere for a pre-buy, but know enough to arm that person next time you go in and say, hey, I want you to do the service bulletin. I want you to do an alternator coupling check. I want you to borescope the cylinders and do whatever. Hire a company like Savvy, right? I do work with Savvy all the time. They're fantastic under Mike Bush. There's so many ways not to rock the boat in a tough economic environment where you can't just easily select from 5 different mechanics, but still get the result you want.
And so that's where I was going to go next, is the Savvy thing. And because I don't know what to look for in a mechanic, and I don't know what I don't know, I actually paid for the Savvy service. I've been thrilled with it because they will be like your go-between between the owner who doesn't know much and the mechanic who's working on your airplane, and they'll make sure that the right thing gets done. They've been fantastic. And when something did get done, they made sure it was done right. When the routine inspections are being done, they made sure that everything was done, and a couple extra things that they recommended. So I think if you're a person who is not mechanically inclined like me, like I wouldn't fly an airplane I worked on. You shouldn't either. But I enlisted Savvy. I pay for their service, and it pays for itself, I believe, tenfold. If you're stuck somewhere, they're going to help you. It's like as the airline, I call the maintenance department. Well, that's my maintenance department. And they're not giving us anything. They're not sponsoring or giving me anything. I will, however, vouch for their service. And if you're like me, you should go to them and use them to help you maintain your airplane.
It is a great service, and they have multiple levels of service that you can use. Like I said, I do disclose that I work with them. So they're absolutely fantastic. And I would add, it still doesn't take away the responsibility to sort of know stuff on your own, because one of the interesting questions I get as someone who works with Savvy is someone asking, that's an interesting opinion that you have, Jeff. That's different than what I was told by this other person who's also a Savvy mechanic. We're not a company that says there's one way to do it and one line. What it is instead is a group of very qualified, very experienced, wonderful human beings and wonderful mechanics that are all going to have their own angle on some things, but they're going to be good. They're going to be really good. And so, and that it's the same, like with the oil thing I talked about. I have started to bring the other mechanics in and say, hey, here's this stuff I learned. Maybe I can change your opinion.
Yeah, I think it's sound advice, and I've been at the whim, and that's been very helpful for me to use a service like that. And you've been extremely helpful when I've had certain issues, and I call you, and there are certain things that there's no way I would have known to even think about. And when I had that engine failure, it wasn't engine failure, engine roughness, because I threw a cylinder. I lost a cylinder as a result of a valve that got thrown. And you told me that didn't have to happen. So here's a flight school that's not doing that extra thing that they could have been doing on every 50-hour or annual inspection, or 100-hour, I'm sorry, an annual inspection. That just because the regs are the worst you can be, they're the minimum. Doesn't mean you can't do these extra things, and those few things that you said to look for, like the valve and the lapping of the valve or whatever, all those things that you mentioned to me, very helpful.
Well, let me give you some bullet points that I think are good test questions for your shop, whoever you are. Right?
Okay. Wait.
If you
okay.
Send Jeff a check for. Oh, I thought you were taking notes. Here's one. If you have a Lycoming engine, ask your shop if they have the tools, the fixture, to do the SB388, the valve wobble check on your Lycoming.
What if it's a Superior based on Lycoming?
Doesn't matter. Same thing. Lycoming, Superior, any Lycoming version. If you have
SB what?
If you have a Continental version, which is their Titan line, a version of Lycoming of the Lycoming design. It's just called the valve wobble check. Just call it valve wobble check, nothing else. It happens to be serviceable in 388. But go and ask them that. It's funny. Someone literally just posted, savvy recommendation is straight weight with oil. No, it's not. It is. Different people have different recommendations. There's new data that is showing this, and it's based on actual testing and actual data. Okay, back to the focus. Ask them if they have this tool, because you should not have a shop that works on Lycomings without this like $200 tool.
And I can't have my valve wobbling.
Those valve guides don't fail. Yes?
I can't have my valve wobbling. Unacceptable.
Okay, if you have a Continental, so that's bullet number one. Number two, if you've got a Continental engine, see if your shop inspects the alternator couplings on that. See if they have an alternator coupling tool, and they've been inspecting that. It's a geared alternator on that. We've talked about that in other shows. It's a very, very, very serious thing. If they don't test that, it doesn't have to be done every annual, but if they do not test that and they don't know about it or don't, whatever, you be skeptical and then go buy it for them. It's one, hour of labor.
I would buy it for me and provide it for them to use, and then keep it in my airplane.
Yeah, do that. That way no one else benefits but you. Exactly. Don't share it. Don't share it. Right. Next one is, do they borescope cylinders? Every single shop should borescope. The borescope should be their best tool. They should say, absolutely. They should say, of course. We use it for this. We use it for that.
Well, the picture's worth 1,000 words. Like, why wouldn't you do that? And you don't have to remove the cylinder to borescope an engine.
Nope. And it's not just for engines, by the way. Use it on all sorts of parts of the aircraft. Ask your shop. Here's another one. Ask your shop if they have the rigging tools, the flight surface rigging tools for your aircraft. If they don't have the rigging tools for your aircraft, they're not checking the rigging of your aircraft. Whatever, during the whole ownership of your plane? I mean, ask them. And if they say,
I don't know what that is. So what does that mean?
Anytime you're going to set up an think of it as setting up the aerodynamics of the aircraft, making sure the ailerons are level, making sure that you have the proper travel, that the things like that. Tensions can be used, cable tensions, using a tensiometer. But there are rigging tools, like little fixtures to like check how, if everything's level and straight. Make your plane fly straight and efficient. Make you go faster. This should be something that gets everyone's attention. Make you go faster.
We never go straight. What? I want to ask that one. So they should have rigging tools for the flight controls. Okay, I don't know who has that for American Champion, or formerly known as.
The point is, you're going to ask your mechanic now, aren't you?
Right? I am. Yeah.
So ask them. Do they have that kind of stuff? Ask them ask them their opinion on things like mag inspections. Do they go through and do that work themselves? Do they do some of that, or do they just pull it up? These are just conversations. They're not threatening to any shop. It's just kind of some bullet points of how much are you really on top of this versus just doing your thing you've done for 40 years. That's what I think.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair.
There's an interesting point about aircraft maintenance I think is sort of too bad. If you look at things like medicine, there's a recognition in the entire industry that the newest people, the newest hires at a medical practice, although they do not have the same experience, the same patient experience, the same business experience, all these other things.
Training.
They have the latest training.
Yeah.
And so people listen. They pay attention. And I think this is missing from the maintenance industry. And the only way to easily get it is to get it yourself from reading, from the show, from things like that. And I'll do a shameless plug. If you go to SocialFlight.com, completely free, there's an FAA credit section. And in that, you can see all of the training. If you click under the IA and the A&P section where we train mechanics, you can see training from Continental, from Tempest Aero that makes like all the oil filters and spark plugs and all these other, and carburetors. You can see training from UAvionics, from just about everybody on this board behind me.
You watch it if you're not a mechanic?
Yeah, absolutely. Completely free. You click a button, you watch it. You'll even get a legal certificate of completion. But this is the latest training that we are offering from all of these companies they want the mechanics to have the training. So it's the
Hmm.
latest knowledge that you could look at it yourself. And again, fine, watch it, casually watch it, but learn something. And then that's your next question the next time you're at the shop. Hey, I
Yeah.
saw this. What are you doing about it? Like, is that something that you're going to check at this annual? I just think it's really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I'm going to go take a look at some of those and see which ones might apply to me and watch them. I think that's a fantastic source. I don't know where to go. I took a few classes in college toward my AMP, and all I learned from that is that I should not rivet, I should not bend hydraulic lines, and I should not bend sheet metal. Those are not my job. So I will take a look, though. I think that's a fantastic idea.
And again, I'll tell you, we've gotten some people saying, "Hey, we asked our shops, but they don't have the thing." If most aircraft these days are worth an awful lot of money, and most flights cost a fair amount of money. So if a specialty tool for your aircraft is less than $1,000 and is probably less than $200, and that's going to be most borescopes, most things. The wobble check tool we just talked about is probably less than $300. Um, I can't imagine a reason and you wouldn't want that to hand to your mechanic and say,
Yeah.
I know, like acknowledge you don't want to go elsewhere, but I know you don't usually use it, but here you go. Please use it on mine.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Especially in the case of the alternator story that you had on one of your previous shows. I think that was very interesting that that never gets looked at or inspected, and it's so easy to do with a cheap tool that you had. And actually, on the Schiff show 2 nights from now, we're going to be talking about an incident, not an accident, involving just something very similar, but not exactly the same alternator failure, but an alternator failure where a pilot elected to continue
Yeah.
and why that was a bad idea, what happened after that, and it gets interesting. I don't know why we're so mission hacking oriented to finish this when red flags are popping up all over the place like don't go. I think that you should have. I like to see when I look at a mechanic shop, I like to see it neat, organized. I like to see little teeny bins that all the screws from one thing go in this bin and that bin. I don't like to see them scattered all over the place. Is that a sign, or is that just me being a little, neurotic? A neat
For
shop, a neat
yeah,
shop.
it's always one of the challenges uh, uh, getting shops to do what they need to do. I mean
Yeah,
that's ultimately the challenge, but you can do the best by being your own advocate on it.
yeah. I just say you go flying with me when we're done working on the airplane, and I'm okay with you.
Yeah, true, right? Get them to put their butt on the line. Why not?
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. We you do your best. You be the best advocate for it because at the end of the day, if something happens, they're going to come after you. The one that you talked to me that you mentioned, the alternator thing, is a huge kind of crusade that I'm on. I have seen two Continental engines that use geared alternators that have essentially, blown up because of one, a failure in maintenance that caused it, and another, a failure of the operator.
wow,
Um, there's nothing wrong with this design. This is a good design, a safe design. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you're not going to maintain it or you're not going to install it properly, you're not going to pay attention to things, that's a big problem. And if you're not going to understand how to fly it, where someone tells you, as I've said, if you have a geared alternator and you lose your alternator, that's an emergency. You land the plane. You land the plane at the nearest safe landing airport.
yeah,
Like that's what you do.
right.
I'm amazed that people will push on, and even if it's not an alternator, like a geared alternator thing,
I know.
the
They
idea that
need to wait.
you're on your battery and you're in IMC and you're still going to make it to your destination.
Yeah,
What is?
don't wait for a catastrophe to decide to land. You don't have to do that. In fact, there's a regulation. I like to teach pilots if you wouldn't take off with the airplane in this condition, then you shouldn't continue with it in this condition.
Yeah.
And you need to kind of pay attention to that. But I don't want to give away my whole show for Thursday night.
No, don't give it away
Uh,
because we're going to talk about that and promote that
yeah.
in a second of you doing it. Someone just asked one question, which is, I want to be clear why that Continental geared alternator thing is not an airworthiness directive, why it's a service bulletin. And the answer is airworthiness directives are for airworthiness issues. There's nothing wrong with this design. This is literally an issue of training and nothing else. This isn't, no one assembled engines incorrectly. No one had a problem with the way it was built. This is and this isn't just Continental. This is Continental, Superior, Ram Aircraft. A bunch of other companies have released things that say, hey guys, you really should know how to do this right. This is obvious. And all we're saying is the RTFM, like read the manual. That's all we're saying.
And on the pilot
and you don't come out with an airworthiness directive just because people aren't reading the manual.
Right. It's like putting on the ATIS that you need to read back all hold short instructions. Are they going to put the whole aim in the ATIS? No. But on the pilot end of that, you need to know your systems. Read your manual. Read the aircraft manual. Know how your systems work. Know what happens if I lose this? What happens if I lose that? How is this connected to that? I think knowing your airplane and being a specialist on your own aircraft is vitally important. So you know how these failures will affect you. What's going to happen next?
Couldn't have said it better. So evaluate your experts. That was our focus. That's exactly what you do, whether they're training you in the cockpit, whether they are giving you ground instruction. Diversify, diversify, diversify. Try other people. Get out there. Spend the money, even though it's going to cost you a little bit more. Take the time. You're going to benefit in so many ways. You're going to be a better pilot. You're going to be a better aircraft owner. Your family's going to be safer flying in the plane. Enjoy it.
Agreed. Enjoy it's what I was going to say. If you're not having fun learning to fly, find an instructor that makes it fun. You've got to have fun. You can learn a lot while you're having fun. In fact, arguably you can learn more while you're having fun because your guard is down, you're open, and it should be an enjoyable experience. If it's a stressful experience and you're not looking forward to the lesson, let that be a red flag. Find an instructor that you meld with a little bit better so that it's fun.
Could not agree more. Absolutely. Well, Brian, somehow we've come to the end of another show.
I don't know how we do that. It's like our phone calls.
We had a few people asking in the chat, so I want to make sure they understand. If you want to go and get, there's so much training. There's training that Brian has out there. There's training from mechanics and from all of the different providers. It's very simple, and again, it's completely free. It is SocialFlight.com. And there's a menu option that says FAA credits. All you have to do is that. Just go click on there. If you want to learn more about mechanical stuff, click on the section for AMPs and IAs. If you want to learn more about flying, click on the other section. There's so much training there. You get wings credit for it. You get AMP credit if you happen to be a mechanic or someday you want to. So again, SocialFlight.com and click on the FAA credits section.
Yeah, and I encourage you to participate in the Wings program because 3 Schiff shows, or even this show and 2 Schiff shows within your flight review period, and you've got the ground portion of your flight review done. Then just go fly with 3 instructors and do 3 lessons sometime over the next 24 calendar months, and you've got a flight review accomplished, and you learned a lot more, and you've kind of spread yourself around a little bit, like you were suggesting. Yeah.
Well, we have come to an end of another one, but people don't have to wait too long because Thursday night, and I will be in attendance, we have the Schiff show.
Yeah, and it will be a
little bit about what you're going to be doing, Brian.
We're going to be looking at an incident, and I got Jeffrey Madison, author of Yikes, 100 Smart Pilots and the Dumb Things They Did Yet Live to Tell About It. Through the NASA ASRS system. I've come to really like Jeffrey. The stuff that he's written in this book is fantastic, and listening to stories from pilots who didn't crash and didn't leave us wondering what happened, they tell us what happened. So we're going to look at one of these instances and talk about what can be learned from it and what we can glean from these incidents that have happened. So Jeffrey and I will be doing that Thursday night on the Schiff Show. Just go to theschiffshow.tv, no registration required. And click on that latest episode at 7 p.m. Central Time. And I'll see you there.
Can I make a one recommendation?
Absolutely.
Don't leave that book on the passenger seat of your aircraft when you're taking passengers up.
It's like my How to Fly for Dummies that I sit there and read while my airliner is boarding.
Can you imagine just put that in the back and taking people up flying?
Yeah, good advice. But it's a great book. I recommend it. And he's not profiting from it. It all goes towards education programs, and we'll talk about that Thursday night. But please join us, theschiffshow.tv, Thursday night, 7 p.m. Central.
Fantastic. And then we will be back on Tuesday, August 19th on SocialFlight Live, the SocialFlight Live show. For that, just go to socialflightlive.com. That's it, socialflightlive.com. And we've got Paul Jackson, Chief Pilot for Advanced Flight Training at Whip Air. This guy has stories for stories of stories that have to do with some of the most amazing float plane adventures. I mean, if you want to just sit back, eat some popcorn, and have fun, come to that show. Tuesday, August 19th. That's next Tuesday. Whip Air, Paul Jackson. That's going to be a ton of fun. And then we're off. And then back on Tuesday, September 2nd, we had a good one coming, Brian. I got a phone call from NORAD. And NORAD
from that TFR bust you did?
Yes, thank you. No. NORAD called me and said, hey, we have had a significant uptick in TFR violations in airspace incursions and flight restricted flight space, airspace. And they asked if they could come on and talk to everybody what's happening and really explain what's going in. And so when you've got someone like NORAD calling and saying they want to be on, we should all be sitting up and listening. So do not miss Tuesday, September 2nd. NORAD.
That'd be cool. And if you're in the Cleveland,
it's a big shot from NORAD coming on. I'm just going to tell you that.
That'll be cool. I'll be definitely watching that. I also, if this weekend, I'll be up in Akron, Ohio at the AOPA Props and Pistons Fly-In Fiesta. I'll be teaching the rusty pilots. Even if you're not rusty, come join us Sunday morning. But if you're up in the Cleveland, I guess it's Akron, Ohio, come on by, join us at the AOPA Fly-In. I'll be there.
Awesome. All right, Brian. Well, we made it to the end of another one. I just want to say, from my perspective, thank you all so much for everything you do to support General Aviation, for taking time out of your evening and joining us here on Cockpit2Cowl, and giving me an opportunity to spend this time with Brian and learn so much, because I'm basically sitting in the audience. I may blab a bit at the end, but I absolutely, this is my favorite night of the month.
I enjoy it as well. It's always fun. The time flies, so you know it's good. And may your valves not wobble.
All right, everyone. Have a good night, and I wish you all blue skies.
Good night, everyone.